The video you're about to watch, of course, capture moments a brave local person in Delta State led the military into the den of kidnappers, successfully rescued kidnapped victims, and ended up in disaliving the bandits and ultimately sending them to their creator. I will allow you to watch the video shortly. But again, I think this actually lays credence to the fact that the locals know the terrain better, and of course, that integrating them into the security architecture will enhance efficiency in security management. Before I bring you the video, briefly, let us just look at the success recorded by the military, because remember that I always say it, that whatever success is coming from, we acknowledge it. Whether on the part of the military or the part of locals, we acknowledge it. This one is coming from the northern part of the country, of course, in Katsina State, where the Air Force went on precision airstrike, killing about 76 bandits, Boko Haram members. And of course, the bombing took place around Cameroon border. I think we must say a very big thank you to the Air Force. Then the other one has to do with, so that I'll bring you the video to watch. The second one has to do with another one that happens in Borno State. And of course, this time around, about 35 militants, Boko Haram members, were killed in that precision airstrike. But let me quickly say that the first one that happened in Katsina, it is recorded that those who were rescued were part of those who were kidnapped when the bandits attacked the mosque the other time. Remember that about 50 persons were disalived, and they had to do that. It happened that some of those rescued in this military operation has to do with those who were taken hostage during that mosque attack. But before we go further, watch the video that capture moment a local person led the military into the bush and confronted the bandits, of course, Fulani militaries, and the government, the military, the locals had upper hand against them. Watch as we come back to further this conversation.
This is almost 1 a.m. This is almost this is for something we left back to now we're heading back to between the Dogwashuku and Ubulukiti. Alright, this is for something here. My brother, who did they kidnap you? On Friday. On Friday? Alright, Bele? By 5 p.m. 5 p.m. Okay. Bele? Yes, sir. Your uncle is coming, okay?
Did he tell you?
See where it is? Yeah. See where I'm out. I just the away here. Okay, what they told them eat the previous food.
They already know this place. Yeah, that guy is spent how many days for their hand?
3 days. You don't know.
Like 3 and 6.
God bless Nigerian soldiers. If not for now, for don't, I don't know where for day now. God bless you now. God bless you now. Jesus Christ. Today is enough is enough now.
Okay.
No, this one. So we are taking.
I think one magazine down. Check it out.
You no go to lake.
One magazine, you every time.
You no go train cow. No. You don't die now. They go hellfire.
On the lake, nothing there for the lake. Oh, don't break the pond finish. No.
God bless Nigerian military.
Yes, sir.
3 brigade Asaba.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
They
are covered everywhere. any case of kidnapping, they are gallant. They are ready to do it. Not be joking. God bless you now. God bless you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Nigeria Army.
Yes, sir.
God bless you now. See the way people are happy now. People are happy.
So you are welcome back. Having watched the video, I think this speaks volume of efficiency when the locals are integrated into the security arrangement. And at this point, let me say that the approach of the Director General of DSS, where he made it very clear that the locals should be empowered to be the first line of defense in issues like this, I think that is the way to go. Because this is not the first time we are seeing success being led by locals, though we understand that in this case, the military were pivotal in the operation. Of course, the military did the operation, but a local who know the terrain better led them into the bush. But again, I think in Abraka, to be precise, recently we saw a huge success that came from the local. In Ogwashuku as well, we saw a similar feat by the locals. We have seen one in Katsina State. We saw one in Kwara recently. So even as the federal government kickstarts the process of recruiting personnel for the forest guard, I think the locals should be adequately and appropriately integrated into it for a better efficiency. But again, let me at this point say that Nigerian government must, as a matter of urgency and necessity, acquire monopoly of coercive power to deal with all these issues. Because a situation where we can clearly see the likes of Shegumi making advocacy for the bandits. Even before now, it is on record that Shegumi was even telling Northerners that they should not vote for anyone that will come hard on bandits, that will buy more equipment to bomb bandits. So the point here is the government must, as a matter of urgency, acquire monopoly of coercive power to police every inch of Nigerian territorial integrity. That is the way to go. That's what makes the government ultimate. Because the way it is, Nigerians need protection. Because it is a responsibility that's incumbent in the office of the president, that's equally incumbent in the offices of the respective governors, even the local government chairmen, having sworn to an oath at their different capacities to protect lives and property. More so, as the Constitution says that the welfare of the people and their security shall be the primary purpose of governance. Talking about Section 14, Section 2B of 1999 Constitution as amended, it's very clear that the government owes a responsibility to protect lives and property. That they must do without excuse. That is what I'm saying at this point, that Nigerians, particularly the patriotic ones, are solidly behind the government in the quest to rid the society the menace of banditry, to take the bandits out of the society, to take the Fulani militias out of our society. Because one thing is clear, that the global terrorism desk already designated Fulani militias of Nigerian extraction as the fourth most dangerous terrorist organization in the world. So I think the government should know that they are dealing with a formidable force, a very formidable one for that matter. For even in the time of Samuel Autumn as a governor of Benue State, they came out boldly to claim responsibility after there was an assassination attempt on the then governor. So a group that can confront the security detail of a governor, you should know what we are dealing with. So that is why all hands must be on deck. Because for me, issue of security or rather insecurity calls for symbiotic relationship. Synergy between all the three tiers of government and the local. The local are very important in this regard, particularly in the area of intelligence gathering. Because I believe that the intelligence, actionable ones for that matter, that needed to nick in the board rests with the locals. Because the local, just as it has been established, that all crime is local. And that we understand that every individual that resides in the local environment is known to the locals and even the traditional rulers in the localities. So the only challenge you have at times is breach of confidence between the locals and the security agencies. So that is why if the locals are adequately integrated into the system, of course, the locals will find easier to divulge such actionable intelligence to their traditional rulers, who can in turn relate with the security agencies for a better dissemination of intelligence. But again, let us say that we must at some point take out of the box, because we cannot continue doing the same thing over and over and expect a different result. To take out of the box in this case is to think of how to leverage on technology to address this insecurity. Because recall that under President Goodluck Jonathan in 2015, we have seen a former House of Assembly member from Borno State who came out clearly to say that the federal government were already, or rather was already winning the war against Boko Haram when the election was postponed for 2 weeks to enable federal government push by Boko Haram. We will recall that Northerners were at the neck of Jonathan because they felt he was not doing enough to stem the tide of insecurity, particularly occasioned by Boko Haram. So Jonathan went and brought in mercenaries, perhaps from Israel. And we understand that, according to the House of Assembly member, those mercenaries were leveraging on technology and they were registering huge success, and they were decimating Boko Haram. Up to a point where Jonathan lost the election and the Buhari came in and jettisoned the whole idea and sent them packing. Today we are back to the trenches. We are still talking about the same problem. And again, the North must equally do everybody a favor, the country a favor, by ensuring that they educate their children, so that their children going forward will not be vulnerable to be radicalized, to be recruited into banditry, into criminality. Because any child you give birth to, you refuse to train the child, you allow the child to grow in the white, definitely that child is a potential Boko Haram, is a potential ISWAP member. That is why the North must rise up and do the needful. Because the money that is being used to address insecurity could have been better used in infrastructural development, to address healthcare, to even diversify the economy into agriculture, or better still, to improve our production sector and to plug some money into our power sector. Because for you to have a sustainable economy, your power sector, you must have a sustainable power supply. And where it is, you must deal with the issue of insecurity holistically before meaningful development can take place. Because even all the effort of federal government trying to woo investors into the country from the Western world, no investor will want to bring his money, his personnel, his equipment into an environment where there is fear, where there is insecurity, where there is no guarantee for safety of life and property. That is why Northern leaders must rise to the occasion and do the needful. Because, and I say this because I saw how Northern leaders tried to blame federal government recently because of out-of-school children in the North. I must say it's a misplaced blame, because I think the Northern leaders must take the blame of out-of-school children in the North. Because the question is, why is it that we don't see the same number of out-of-school children as is in the North? Why is it that we don't see such in the South? It's got to show that the leaders in the North are not doing their job. There is lack of parental care, there is failure of leadership. Because even if the argument of some school of thought talking about the responsibility of federal government, the state government, the local government to train Nigerian child under the universal basic education, what the constitution says is the under that same universal basic education, even as the 3 tiers of government have the responsibility of training Nigerian child, what behoves on government, federal government to do is the policy direction and the funding. And this responsibility they shoulder for all the 36 states without exception. And under the same circumstance, we are not seeing out-of-school children in the South as much as we see in the North. To the point that what is in the North is already up to a stage of emergency. Because there's no better way to explain it. How can you explain a situation where in a state you're having 60-something% out of school children In some states, you are talking about 50-something. In some states, you are talking about 30-something, 40-something, as the case may be. And here we are talking about children between the age of 6 and 16 years. These are obviously potential Boko Haram members. Obviously bandit members. So that is why the North stand leaders more right to the occasion and do the needful. But again, just like I said, in all of this, we need to rejig the security architecture. Good and federal government have already talked about the issue of forest guard, and I want to believe that it will be given a speed of light, because it is even surprising that we are not seeing much tenacity, much energy from the state governors, because we all know that we know how powerful state governors are when they come under the platform of Northern governors, under the platform of Nigerian Governor Forum. We have seen them, even in the time of Muhammadu Buhari, as strong as Buhari may want people to believe. We saw Nigerian Governor Forum making the government of Buhari to rescind so many decisions he took. So they should equally bring that their influence to bear this time around, that we need to rejig the security architecture, because it make no sense to say the governors are the governors and the respective security officers or their respective states, yet they do not parade any security power. I'm of the view that hence security responsibility, security power is shared by constitution. That security power should equally be shared in practice, not just in principle, not just on paper. Because you cannot be answering the governor and the chief executive officer of a state, yet you do not command the commissioner of police in your state, you don't command the director of DSS in your state, even the military formation in your state, you do not command any of them. And again, this takes me to the unfortunate incident that happened after the Abuja Accord, where Gowon came back and denied everything. I want to say that if Gowon had allowed the Abuja Accord to stand, by now no one will be talking about insecurity, because all these issues have been dealt with at the regional level. Because what we had then was a true federalism that already addressed issue of decentralization of police, decentralization of even the military. And I want to say that when we were in third region and when we leveraged on agriculture for our economy, the economy was better. So that is why we must find a way to restructure this country. Until we do that, I want to say that those who benefit, who feed fat on the current fraudulent status quo, will not allow any change. Of course, they will always resist any meaningful change, just as we saw recently when federal government came up with the idea of tax reform bills that seek to actually adequately and appropriately accommodate and compensate areas where you have more derivation, where goods and services are more consumed, where you derive more revenue. Unfortunately, northern leaders, stakeholders saw it as an avenue to deplete their revenue, and they resisted it. So that is why I say the North will always resist any agenda to tamper with the current status quo, because they are the greatest beneficiary of the current fraudulent status quo. Because for me, I don't see any justification behind Kano is having 44 local governments. Jigawa, that is carved out of Kano, is having 27 local governments. Put together, I'm talking about 71 local governments. And whereas a place like Kano is not as populated as Lagos State, and a place like Kano, it do not even have a drop of oil. And if they were to share national resources on the basis of number of local governments, or even bring representatives at the national level or the basis of local government, it means those places will have more representative, more revenue than areas where the revenue is even coming from. And come to think of it, when agriculture was the Ministry of Economy, revenue was given to areas where you get the products. Of course, they were taking 50%. Irrespective of the fact that they would have gotten subvention, improved seed varieties for cultivation from federal government. So I must say that even the current system that gives the eastern part of the country just 5 states instead of 6 that is in other geopolitical zones is not fair. Because for me, for equity, fairness, and national cohesion, Southeast is supposed to have up to 6 states just to measure up with other states. Because if you look at the creation of the states and all the arrangement in Nigeria, it was done by the military, and the military never gets the consent or endorsement of Nigerians. They seize the government by force, and it happened that most of the leadership of the country under military were from the north, so they were choosing and picking how to decide how to share the state, divide the state, and there was nothing like equity, fairness, and justice. That is why we need to address most of all these things. But meanwhile, let me say maybe thank you for your time. This is David and Samatu.